And as you do, what I'd like you to do is just to pay attention to and observe what is going on for you when you are drawing. So kind of have an out-of-body experience. Watch yourself drawing, all right? What are you doing? When are you doing it? Why are you doing it? Also, pay attention to how it feels when you're drawing. Are you kind of being bombarded by negative thoughts? Is there talk in your head that is supportive and constructive, helping pull you in different directions? What is going on for you? What is your experience doing it? And also, what is your process doing it? It's just a 5-minute drawing. You won't have time to finish the drawing, but you will have enough time to kind of observe your own process. So let's give this a try with this little skull right here. And what I'd like you to do, just make a sketch, make a drawing of what you see. And again, observe your own process. How does it feel as you're drawing? And what are you doing to take this image on the screen and transfer it to something on your paper? All right? We'll take about 4 minutes to do this. Notice if you're using any strategy to kind of get things down on paper. What are you doing? When? Why are you doing it? Just keep an eye on that as you go. Notice how you feel as you're drawing. Is it a positive experience? Is it a frustrating experience? What is going on emotionally as you're doing it? What is the conversation in your head like? want to ask folks, first of all, what does it feel like when you're drawing? What is the experience like for you? What is going on in your head as you're making your marks on the paper? Yes. Oh, is it- So you're talking about your general strategy. Let's start with that. So your general strategy, you're blocking in a better general shape. You're saying you're looking at how broad it is versus tall it is. The general proportions of it. What other sort of general strategy things are people doing? That's great.
So I looked at the length versus the height of the skull and made a rectangle to approximately get. So just made a box to get that.
Sort of rectangular skull, so you're getting generally these proportions blocked in and then filling in from there. Other strategies, what were people finding themselves doing? Yes?
Well, I was got the general shape and then was trying to sort of follow the cracks to kind of figure out where the portions would be for like the eye socket.
So placing the major features relative to each other? Great, yes?
And then the dark spots.
Oh, okay, so looking at these sorts of zones and kind of placing those. Excellent, excellent, yes?
I was looking at like a distinctive shape, like the holes and like the teeth, like the shape like triangle.
Right. So you were finding triangles
Yeah,
and other sort of distinctive, sort of geometric shapes in those and placing those. Excellent. What about kind of the voice in your head? Did you find the sort of self-talk, kind of your sort of your feeling as you did that? Was that a positive experience? Was it a frustrating experience? What does it feel like when you're actually out there with your pencil in your hand?
awkward.
Feels a little bit awkward.
Yeah, just like knowing that it's the portion isn't right.
Right. So sometimes we kind of get this feeling that there's something going on here, and that doesn't feel it can feel kind of funny, right? Like it's not quite right. Right. It can feel frustrating. It can feel very, very frustrating. Sometimes we get really positive feelings from doing this, and sometimes there's a real frustration there. The more that we do things that kind of promote that frustration, the less likely it is that we actually continue to draw. And there are some approaches to drawing that can lead to really profound frustration. Similarly, the more that we find ways of drawing that are actually enjoyable to do, the more likely we're going to pick up our pencil again and do it again and again and again and again and again. And that ends up actually being the trick to getting good at drawing. The more you draw, the better you get at drawing. So if we can make the experience more fun and more of a delight for us, so you can't wait to kind of grab your pencil and go, you then are setting yourself up to make lots of pictures. So what I want to do today is give you a whole bunch of strategies to take something that you're looking at and to get it down onto the paper in a way that feels, that is sort of organically yours. I've seen a number of different drawing strategies presented kind of as exercises. But what I find is that a lot of those things we often think of as an exercise can be integrated together to make a kind of a flow for your drawing. So I want to walk you through my drawing flow in drawing, let's see, where did I put, oh, here's my little clicker, in making this sketch right here. And then we'll take a look at each of those steps in a little bit more detail to kind of give you a quiver of tools that you can use when you're trying to take something and put it down on the paper. Then we'll take another look at it and kind of see how these integrate together. So the first thing that I do when I'm making a sketch like this is lightly, very, very lightly and loosely on my piece of paper, I make a sketch, kind of an overall scribbly oomph drawing of what I see. Can you see this in the back?
Yeah.
Right, it's possible that on the video here, you won't see anything at all because this is a very, very pale image. There's no detail here at all. I'm trying to just basically block in the size, the proportions of this thing. And I intentionally have no detail here. My next step is very similar to what Lena was doing. She was looking at how broad is this thing versus how high is this thing. She's starting to think about measuring this object. She's looking at the overall proportions of what she's seeing. So what I'll often do is just pick something as a measuring tool. Excuse me. Perhaps the distance from the base of the nose here to the end of the teeth. And I'm going to call that distance 1. Right? And just use this nose-tooth distance as a measuring tool to help me block in the general proportions of this. So I found this thing to be about 3 of those widths wide, about 2 of those lengths tall. I'm looking at the overall proportions of this. Very often, when I'm drawing something, the parts of it that are the most interesting to me, if something's really cool, I compensate for that by just drawing it even bigger on my picture. So if you've ever drawn a picture, say, of a human being, you ended up accidentally with a head that was way too big. It's just because your attention is pulled to that, we tend to draw it too big. Again and again, you can look at drawings and paintings of birds of prey that people do. They always have beaks that are too big, and talons that are huge, because they're cool. And so when it's cool, we go, oh wow, we focus on that, and we draw it too big. So this is a way of kind of blocking in general size of this thing. And getting, solving some of those proportion problems. If I see at this point that the thing, I've made it too short, perhaps in the back, it's easy to change the size of this drawing because I haven't put any detail. The moment you put detail onto a drawing, you're going to lock yourself into keeping whatever you have there. You're not going to want to erase the pretty details that you make. You're going to convince yourself that it's right. Another thing that I could do is I could just pick a couple of clear landmarks, like the back of the skull down here to where the teeth connect together. And look at, when I draw a line between these 2 landmarks, where does that go on my real object? And when I do that, I notice that, oh, the whole kind of jawbone rests on that. I made mine a little bit too tall here. It's a chance for me by kind of looking, those things should line up. I have a chance to change those things on my drawing. Another line that I drew just from the corner of the jaw here to the where the teeth start up here. Held my pencil up and looked at how those things aligned and saw that the corner of its cheekbone came all the way out to that line here. And on my little sketch, it doesn't reach that yet. So I need to kind of move that down. I can realize these things now, and it gives me a chance, instead of later on in the drawing, realizing that something is off. My next step was to look at what artists call the negative spaces, the negative shapes in a drawing. And these are, and we'll go into this in a little bit more in a moment. Instead of looking at, here's the shape of the top part of my jaw, here's the shape of the bottom part of my jaw, I'm looking at the shape of the hole between the top and the bottom as its own actual shape with height and width. If I put that in, it's going to force me to make the bottom jaw the right distance away. But if I was just drawing top jaw and then bottom jaw, I could very easily have these 2 things accidentally too close together. Very similar to what you were talking about, kind of looking at the dark shapes, right? You're saying you're looking at those dark shapes like up here in the nose, looking at that as a shape. That's key. My next step is to start to think of this object as a 3-dimensional form. That porcupine skull had a very boxy nose sticking out. And that boxy nose, right in here, I can think of as sort of a cube form. If there's part of this drawing that sort of suggests itself to sort of simplifying in my head as a 3-dimensional shape, I want to be able to visualize that and draw it onto here. Some parts may not really lend themselves to that. Lower jaw back here. That real box of a nose out there with that kind of slight cone of porcupine at the base of the tooth sticking out. Those to me felt very, very geometrical. There are parts of my drawing that I can kind of see those geometrical relationships. I'm going to map those onto my preliminary drawing. And then over this, I'm going to start to draw my kind of hard, bold lines. These are the ones that people are going to see, like, oh, here's the edge of this. I pop these in, but because I already have this in the background, I can now start to concentrate on how I'm actually making my line, instead of where does this line go. Because there's actually a lot of work you'll see at the end of this workshop in how we make these lines. This line starts off as sort of a dotted, dashed thing, starts very thin, gets thicker, and then thin again. We'll be looking at variation in our lines, and if you have to keep that in mind, and where does this line actually go at the same time? For me, it's overwhelming. So I break my drawing up into different stages. First I block it in, and then I put on top of that my sort of more finished line. On top of this, I can give a suggestion of the roundness or curves of this shape. And this is what I call contour shading, where my lines are going to suggest that this is a plane that is coming down here. There's something else coming in at a different direction, a different plane here. So with my actual shading strokes, I can suggest the depth of the form of this object. And the final piece of the whole thing is to drop in detail. And this is something that most people put in way too early in the drawing. Once you start putting in detail, you're not going to be able to see that, ooh, I made the back of the head too short. Because you've got this beautiful detail in there, your brain is going to be all wrapped around kind of keeping those details in there. So, detail, it's a little spice added at the end of the drawing. That's my general flow through this. What I'd like to now do is to unpack each of those steps and help you think of them as a set of tools in your repertoire that you can pull out to help you see something and get down onto the piece of paper. Then again, we'll walk through these, once we go through these in detail, we'll go through that kind of flow with that porcupine skull again, and you'll see how each of these are not discrete individual things, but part of a larger process that can be integrated together. So I want to break these down in a little bit more detail, so you really have a set of tools that you can bring to bear on drawing whatever it is you want to look at. We've got contour, gesture, measured drawings, negative space, constructed drawings, and finally contour shading. Let's take a look at those in detail. Contour drawing is an extremely useful skill. To introduce it to you, we're going to do, this is, first it's going to be more of an exercise, and then you'll see how this blends into an actual approach when you're drawing. Contour drawing is a lot of fun. What it involves is you're going to look at a subject, you're going to be making a drawing of it, but you don't get to peek at your paper. Right? If, when you're done with this, and you finally do get to look at your paper, and I'll tell you when, if you don't laugh, you're probably peaked, and we're cheating. Right? It will look goofy. It'll look weird. But what you're going to find is that there are certain parts of it that you'll see, yeah, actually some little nuance of an angle there, I actually captured that little turn and angle. This is our drawing. This is our photograph. And what we're going to do is, with this bobcat skull, you're just going to put your pencil down on some random part. You can follow the outline or you can follow inner lines. You can go wherever you want on it. But you want to move your pencil very slowly like an ant. And every time you come to a slight change in angle of your object, your pencil wants to respond to that. So what you want to imagine is a thread that goes from your eye through your brain and out your hand. And every time your pencil sees a slight change, your eye sees a slight change in angle, your pencil responds to that. You don't have to make it all hook together. It's better if it doesn't. It'll really make you laugh when you don't peek at it, right? Well, we're gonna do this for 3 minutes, right? And what I want you to do is first just relax, breathe. Hold your breath, drop your shoulders. Pick a starting point and put your pencil down. Right? And then begin to slowly move your pencil. And take your time wrapping smoothly around each little change in direction that you see. Let your pencil follow it slowly. Drop your shoulders. Breathe. There's a thread that connects your eye and your hand. And you've got enough tension on that thread so every little jiggle that your eye makes, your hand responds. This is something you can train into your fingers. The more you do it, the better it gets. Relax, drop your shoulders, and clench your jaw. It's okay to, if you kind of come out to a dead end, you can retrace your steps, but you're not looking down at your paper. You might follow a different line. Never lift your hand from that paper. You're waiting at the dentist office. Pick up a little piece of paper and just do this with the begonia that's sitting there. You can even use your own hand. Your hand is always there. If it isn't, you've got other problems, bigger problems that you're concerning yourself with than being at the dentist's office. Just let your eye be a little ant. See how subtle a change your pencil can respond to. And take a look down. Wait, but now take a look at those lines and see if there is some little part of it where you recognize, oh, that little angle right there, that little moment right there. Can you find a little moment where your pencil was really responding to a subtlety of angle in this skull? It shouldn't all connect together. That's the power of getting yourself to look at the object rather than your paper. There's an interesting study that was done. An art teacher filmed their students doing drawing. They start off kind of looking at the thing they're doing, and then more and more and more, they're just looking down at their paper. And they're getting connected with what's here, but not what's right there. All the answers are right there. And we want to keep ourselves coming back into that and getting information. A version of this is called a modified contour drawing. And in this, you get to peek. So it's going to look a little bit more like what you were looking at. You're going to get to peek. But, and you also get to, take your pencil and start in a new place. You kind of come to an end of the line, you can pick your pencil up and kind of begin at another spot. Right? With a modified contour drawing, you want to just sort of be aware of, we often feel most comfortable when we're just looking down at our paper drawing, but again, all the answers are there. The more that you can kind of get yourself to draw, like check, draw, while you're actually looking at the object. And every once in a while, just sort of keeping yourself on track by looking down. You're going to keep yourself finding those angles that are kind of critically describe the subject that you're seeing. Let's give this partial contour drawing a shot with the same skull. So, new spot on the page or a new page. You can start anywhere you want, but you don't have to worry about making this look perfect. But it's still going to be rather goofy, but you want to kind of keep that connection between your fingers and your eye. But you can, every once in a while, kind of bob your head down, keep yourself on track, and see what that's like. Just try this for a few minutes. Again, this is a skill that gets better with practice. With more practice, you will start to trust your hand on the page where you're actually drawing and not looking where your pencil is going. The more that you can do that, that's going to open up all sorts of possibilities in drawing and sketching in the field. And most importantly, it gets you looking at the subject, not playing with the vision in your head of how this should look. Relax your shoulders. And clench your jaw.